Let's talk a little bit about the initial earthworks and plantation and what kind of labor and effort that took. So it really depends on what is your starting point. For us, the starting point was a completely barren piece of land, and we also had a huge gush of water going through here, so which was pretty destructive. So we had no choice but to do a lot of earthwork to manage that water, and of course dig a large number of pits for us to plant our trees in. So let's talk about tree plantation first. We started off by planting 1,000 trees in soil which was fairly compacted. So we had no choice but to make pits and then to also reinforce those pits with a little bit of cow manure, some good soil, and also bone meal, so that the trees have a good chance to survive. This is what we did initially with 1,000 trees, but then as the ecosystem developed, today if we have to plant a tree, we don't even dig a pit. We basically just dig a small hole and put the tree packet right into that hole. So it really depends what your starting point is, and you may need to do a lot of effort if you're starting with a very, very barren piece of land, and you may not need to do too much effort if you already have a little bit of an ecosystem in place. Then all you need to do is to really add to that, and that's much simpler to do. Now coming to waterworks. So basically a lot of us have started thinking that we don't need to manage the rainwater because we have we have a tube well, and we can sort of at the press of a button get any amount of water that we want. But the truth is that the tube well will run out someday, and secondly, the magic that rainwater can do, tube well water cannot do, because for several reasons. I believe that rainwater is more acidic than tube well water, which is more alkaline. And the plants actually benefit from this slightly acidic water. So it's good for us to value and respect rainwater coming into our property. Now, like I mentioned, that in our case, we had a lot of stormwater runoff somewhere right behind me, which used to come into the property and move around with a lot of destruction. So we needed to do a lot of earthwork to manage that, which involved making a channel, digging swales, and even digging 2 ponds and 4 shallow pools. Now all this took JCB effort, took man hours. We also had to buy some lining for the pond. That also cost us money. So it wasn't cheap. But you may not have that issue. So it really depends from plot to plot and from land to land. We've just leased out some more land north of us recently, which is where the water actually comes in from, and we've just finished doing all the earthworks, which I'll show you in another video, but that's sort of taken us about 4 days of JCB working. So it would have cost us about 35 to 40,000 rupees just to do all that earthwork, to manage that water. And it's primarily building a lot of swales and mounds to make sure that the water which is coming down the hills is actually getting slowed down and trapped. So I'll take you around that some other time when it gets a little bit more pleasant, because right now it's very hot. But this is just to give you a flavor of what kind of earthworks you may need to do and what that might cost you. So a permaculture farm can be as financially sustainable as any other farm. Right? There is a myth that people think that conventional chemical farming is giving you potloads of money, and permaculture will not. In fact, I will argue that with permaculture you get so many different types of produce at the same time that you can actually earn much more here than what you would earn in conventional farming. So if you do the math, like just to give you an example, a neighboring farmer of ours might be growing just one produce in a season, and earning roughly about 20,000 rupees profit per acre in that season, if he's lucky, if all goes well, because the operating costs are huge. The cost of the seed, the cost of the insecticide, the cost of the weedicide, the cost of watering, labor, tractoring. So that's all he's getting. And if, God forbid, unseasonal rain happens, storms happen, or a pest attack happens, he's likely to lose this entire crop. At the same time, what we would be doing here during that same season when he's growing one crop, we would actually be growing almost 50 or 60 different things, right? So we end up selling much more produce, not just crops, but also fruit, also vegetables, food, processed food. For example, you can make chutneys, you can make pickles, you can make amchur. So you are actually diversifying your portfolio, and you know when you diversify your portfolio, you lower your risk and actually get higher returns. So you can definitely have a sustainable permaculture business. What's even better is that you can add a lot of charm to your farm and do things like homestays or agri-tourism, or even workshops and courses for people, which can become an additional source of revenue for you. It's almost impossible to do that in a chemical farm, because nobody wants to come and live with their family on a chemical farm for the weekend. So let's talk a little bit about the team at Ananda. The team at Ananda comprises of me and my family. And we come here and work whenever we can. For the last 9 years that we've had Ananda, we've also had full-time jobs, so we've not been here all the time. We really depend and rely on the local team that we've got in place, and it's been the same set of people since literally the time we started the farm. So our supervisor, Panditji, is the one who runs this team, and we have 5 other people who work on what's now almost 13 to 14 acres of land. We never hire temporary labor. We are always working only with these 5 people, which I believe is not bad at all. And they are the ones who manage it. My family and I actually end up doing work in the vegetable gardens. We do a lot of the harvesting of the fruit, the sorting, sifting, seed management, nursery management, also sowing some of the things. But the big work of putting crops, sowing crops, tilling, or preparing the fields, etc., is all done by our team on the ground. They also look after the animals, like the big animals, the cows, etc. They know how to feed them, they look after them. Well, at the moment we don't keep daily activity logs, but it is a very, very good practice to have. And what we currently do is a conversation that Panditji and I have every day about what's the plan for tomorrow. So we always discuss this and say, okay, tomorrow these are the tasks that need to be done. And then in the morning we'll do a quick check again that whether people have got on to their tasks, where has X person gone and where has Y person gone. However, having said that, life at a farm is very unpredictable, and there is something new and exciting happening here every day. So many times we plan something, but we are not able to execute it because something new may have come up. Like, for example, the tube well may have developed a fault, which is exactly what's happened today. Or an animal may have fallen sick, or suddenly a tractor may have been available to do the threshing of our crop, which would not be available otherwise. So we just decided to call him in today. Things like that. So there is a little bit of unpredictability on a daily routine, but it's extremely good to keep a log of activities. Well, we have not availed any government subsidy only because we were always pressed for time and we had full-time jobs. But I would highly recommend to take some of the government subsidies because they are pretty easily available. And they require a little bit of paperwork and bureaucracy, but I do believe that if you have the time, you should follow up and get some government subsidies. There are enough subsidies available for waterworks, for earthworks, for soil restoration, for tree plantation, and it's really good to get engaged with the local forest officer or the seed corporation or the local patwaris and the kanugos and check with them what all is going on in the area. The initial windbreak trees were planted along with the other trees that we planted, which was a 1,000 tree plantation, which we did in the July of 2011. And it took about 3-4 days for us to plant all of them because we already made the pits over the months of May and June. So we knew we were going to do the plantation in July. We finished making all the pits over those 2 months, marking them out, digging them out, reinforcing them with some cow manure and some bone meal and some good soil. And this goes to show that monsoon planning has to be done at the farm. Even today, we continue to plant at least 200-300 trees every monsoon, and we plan for it well in advance. We've dug a lot of pits. There are some I can see just sitting here, and they've been lying open and actually getting a lot of water into them every time we've had a few rain showers. We will be just planting here and covering them up pretty soon with our mango saplings. But it's just something that you have to plan for. If you do not plan for your plantation, it's not going to happen suddenly one day. So please plan for them, and the actual effort then for putting the saplings in place is just 3 or 4 days. So in the initial years, you will plant your saplings during the rainy season, but you will have to water them specifically in the months of May and June of the subsequent year. Right? So let's say you plant them in July, August, September, you'll keep having rains, you'll get into the winter season where evaporation losses are not too much. By and large, the plant will become dormant, it will stay where it is. Then comes spring, where you'll have to maybe do one watering, but usually there's some rain in the winter and that helps. But it's really May and June when it becomes extremely hot, 46, 47 degrees, your sapling is still very small. If you do not water it and mulch it during this time, you will lose that sapling. So May and June of the following year are the most critical times. If you can save them through that period, then you get rains again in July, September, and by then the tree will become slightly bigger. After 3 years or so, you don't really need to water your trees, because if you've done your water management in place, the trees' roots have become pretty deep. They are actually quite self-sufficient, and if your groundwater is good because of your water management, your trees will do just fine. Yes, we do have honeybees. In fact, we've just introduced 2 honeybee boxes, and I've now got trained to be a beekeeper as well. The primary idea of getting honeybees is to improve the pollination rates at the farm. Honeybees take very little maintenance. In fact, nobody on the farm manages them apart from me. And at the moment, we don't have any plans of taking honey, at least for the first few years. We just want our hives to be stabilized here and to have enough number of bees to keep our pollination rates at a good level. So if you have a full-time job and you want to have a farm, you should not be worried about the fact that you need to leave your job to build a farm. In fact, I recommend to most people who have full-time jobs that they should keep working while they get started on building the farm. And the reason I say this is because it takes about 4 to 5 years for a full ecosystem to develop. And while that ecosystem is developing, the only thing that needs to be done is to water the trees and to make sure that the trees are not damaged by any wild animals. So you basically need one caretaker who will water during the day and make sure that at night no wild animals are coming in. First 5 years, just do that and forget about anything else. Once that ecosystem has developed, then you need a little bit more time. But if you have a good capable team which you hired locally, not people coming from other states, but people who live in that particular village, if you hire them, they are much more dependable because they live locally. They are not likely to go back to their homes and leave you without any help. And they also start feeling happy, and they learn a lot, and they feel like excited about being part of a slightly different project than what they would have probably seen. They also enjoy the interaction with urban people who may have a different set of experiences, and they get to learn a little bit from us, and we get to learn a lot from them because they have the local knowledge and the local expertise. So with some good teamwork, with some good collaboration, applying all your principles that you've learned at work in terms of leadership, time management, motivating people, keeping them energized and excited, you can actually be a very successful part-time farmer who is holding on to their full-time job and yet managing to get things. The entire digital experience of Ananda is managed by my 2 very bright daughters, Radha and Ira. They together manage the website, the social media channels. This video is being made by them, and they've become, they are the digital generation. They are completely clued on to what kind of content will appeal to you guys, what questions you are asking, and how we need to answer them. So, if you think they do a good job, do leave a comment at the bottom of this video. So thanks for watching, guys, and if you like this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and do stay tuned in for more videos coming from Ananda Permaculture Farm. Bye bye.